Yes, Rick, we are live, my friend.
You know it, buddy.
Yeah, man, it is April 2nd, 2021. How's your Good Friday going today, guys? Good?
It's going great, brother.
Thanks.
It's going
Thanks
absolutely
for being
wonderful.
Yeah, thanks for joining me on this Good Friday. So, hey, Rick, we got a great show. Why don't you go ahead and intro a man who really doesn't need any introduction? Why don't you go ahead, pal?
All right, buddy. So, for all the viewers, listeners out there, we have Mr. Jack Carr. So I'm just going to give you a quick little rundown on Jack. So Jack is a Navy SEAL. He's an author. His newest book, The Devil Hand, comes out April 13th. He is a podcaster, just stepped into that realm. So don't forget to check out his podcast, Danger Close Podcast. He is a Fox News contributor. He is also the executive producer of The Terminal List. He is a Magnum PI fan, a scholar of history, a great American. Thank you, Jack, for your service, and welcome to On the Range Podcast.
Yes, brother. Thanks for being here, pal.
Thank you guys for having me on. I'm fired up. And the most important thing about all of that you just said was Magnum PI fan, obviously.
Oh, hey,
dude.
Yeah. We'll definitely deep dive into that stuff. So
awesome.
A lot of people are probably Googling right now, who's Magnum PI? It's
no, not anybody that listens to this. Nobody listens to this is doing that. I know that.
Can you imagine being Tom Selleck during that time period? Oh my God.
The best.
Yes. Yeah, man.
Just the man. Yeah. I keep getting people that reach out and say, hey, get Tom Selleck to come on and be James Reese's dad in the series with some sort of
great idea
or something like that. So I'm working on it. I don't know if he can zip away, but we got a list of some pretty cool people for that possible role. So we'll see.
That would be awesome.
That would be great. We really appreciate you coming on the show, and there's no surprise that you were receptive to coming out and being on the show. We were talking before the show about, we had an opportunity to meet you at SHOT Show and had a conversation with my wife and I really appreciated how you were engaged and very present during that conversation. It really meant a lot to us, and we had a lot of fun meeting you. So again, thanks for being here, and congratulations on your 4th installment of this series of The Terminal List. And how is that going as far as sales? What the paperback is out now on Amazon, correct? Is that where we're at?
So we are no, nothing is out yet for Devil's Hand. That's April 13th. Hardcover hits same day as the audiobook and ebook. And then the first 3 books are out there in all formats. So those are out there. Though I found out that it's very difficult to find a hardcover edition of The Terminal List. People reach out to me every week asking how they can get one, and there may be a reprint coming soon, I'm told.
Oh,
so
good,
nice.
Good.
Yeah. So everything's going great. It's crazy. It's crazy gearing up for this thing, doing getting the series off the ground for Amazon, getting that filming done with some amazing people out here in LA right now. And then, full 2-week sprint through book launch until April 13th.
Wow.
Through April 13th. Yeah.
I mean, you're on fire.
It's a little busy.
Yeah.
But it's great. Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And that writing book 5 at the same time. So
wow.
A lot of things going on, but I feel extremely fortunate that the books are resonating and that we have this incredible group of people. I mean, for people that have tuned into or seen me on podcast before, jumped on my Instagram, which is Jack Carr USA, you'll notice the different background here. It's because I'm on the road, very LA, very California behind
very
me.
LA.
Just how it goes.
Yeah.
You covered that part, so that's important.
That is. I just want to make sure that people didn't think that I
do that. We want to make sure that everybody knows you did not do that. So
no. But point being, out in LA, and about 350 people working on the set for The Terminal List. So
wow.
With a crazy budget, crazy sets. It's just amazing people involved, and I just in awe of the whole thing.
Wow. Congratulations on that, by the way. That's going to be awesome. Now, you're the executive producer, correct?
That's right. Executive producer. And then I've advised on the scripts as well, which is great. And I'm pretty involved. Chris Pratt wanted me involved. Antoine Fuqua wanted me involved. Who's directing. So right from the get-go. So I've been intimately involved from the inception of this thing, which is pretty cool, because a lot of times they like to get rid of the author right away. They don't want the author on set saying, "You ruined my vision,"
Yes.
But for me, I understand, hey, you tell a story differently visually than you do on the page. And my whole life, I grew up reading these thrillers and then watching some of them get adapted to television or to movies, and then also being just a fan of popular culture in general and movies in general. So kind of giving myself this education in the art of storytelling, both through the books I was reading and then what I was watching on the screen. But I didn't really realize that I was giving myself that education. I was just enjoying reading and watching movies. But today it comes in handy. So I'm on the set now, and I can say I can really, add my 2 cents and not have it be for naught.
Yeah. Well, it's obvious that you're a fantastic storyteller, but like you said, going from print to film is a completely different animal. Now, how was it pitched? Did you pitch it to someone? Did someone approach you after it got some steam? Were you approached? How did that actually work?
Yeah, it was a little crazy. So the book was coming out in March of 2018, and did I lose you guys? Am I still here?
You're still there.
Okay,
You're still there.
You guys went away, so I didn't know if we had a.
No, we make you big every once in a while. So
yeah, our viewers would rather see you than see us. They always see us.
It threw me off. Almost had to judo chop. So a friend called me out of the blue, and I hadn't talked to him in a long time. We were in the SEAL teams together, and he called me in November of 2017. And first he asked if I remembered him, and of course I remembered him. And he said, "Hey, well, I always wanted to thank you for what you did for me when we were in the SEAL teams." And I couldn't really remember what it was. And he said, "Hey, you're the only person that sat me down as I was getting out. You introduced me to people in the private sector, talked to me about transition, and no one else took the time to do that. And I've never forgotten it." And I was like, "Yeah, hey, no problem, man. How's it going?" And he's like, "It's going great. I heard you have a book coming out." And I said, "Yeah, it comes out in a few months here." And I have this galley copy, which is like a rough draft. And for those listening or watching, it's like it's printed copy, but it's not the final edition. It goes out in advance of publication. So I told him, "Hey, I'd love to send you one." And he said, "Yeah, I'd love that, but I'd like to give one to a friend of mine." And I said, "Yeah, no problem. Who's that?" And he said, "Chris Pratt." And I was like, "Wow. Oh, that's interesting," because as I was writing this, I thought of Chris Pratt playing the main role. And he's the only person I thought of playing that main role. So, so the lead character, James Reese, who's a former Navy SEAL sniper. So that he gave it to Chris, and Chris read it at the end of December, and then called a week later and wanted to option it. And at the same time, Antoine Fuqua got it, and he's the only person I ever wanted to direct. And he did Training Day, Tears of the Sun, Magnificent Seven. He's just an incredible guy, Equalizer. And he called Chris and said, "Hey, let's do this thing together." So then process-wise, then they got a showrunner, which is like a screenwriter and kind of the puppet master of these things in a series anyway. And then we got together, and I advised on this first script, and then Chris took it with that screenwriter and with Antoine Fuqua, and they took it to Amazon, they took it to Netflix, they took it to HBO, they took it all over, and Amazon ended up with it. And then they put a writer's room together, and then you go through the rest of the process building out these scripts, and then you find yourself on a set on the Paramount lot here in LA.
You find yourself the executive producer on the set.
Yeah, it was pretty cool, pretty cool. But even better is that for this first episode anyway, there's a bunch of SEALs in the first episode. So all my buddies are up here. So we had like 12 guys that I was in the SEAL teams with. The guy that introduced Chris to the novel has a role, like a serious role in this.
Wow.
The other SEAls that are in it are because you don't have to teach any movement to these guys. We've all been downrange together. We all know each other. So we're going through doing this movement, and everybody knows what to do. Everybody's feeding off each other, going down these, doing what they need to do. And it's fantastic. The technical advisor is a buddy of mine from the SEAL teams, Ray Mendoza, awesome guy. And just, Ryan Sangster is amazing. He's on the A-dub, just like getting after it. And you can just, I get fired up. I'm watching on these screens from my little like chair area here. We have all these screens and all different cameras. And I want to get in there with them. I feel bad that I'm on the outside. I'm like, I want to get in there with those guys. So it was cool. Well, but they are giving me a cameo at some point. So that's,
I was going to say, as the executive producer, can't you do like a Alfred Hitchcock cameo kind of a thing? Or
yeah. So I have that going on, and I initially thought that it was they're gonna like, hey, just put him in the back walking by, just make the author happy, that sort of thing. And I was very happy with that. I was like, yeah, it's fantastic. I'm just happy to be here. But now it's growing into something else, and it grew into, okay, you're going to be this assassin, and it kind of changes from the book a little bit. But like, you're going to be an assassin, you're going to have this fight with Chris, and I'm like, okay, check. And then I'm like, I better start working out a little bit, because I've been doing a lot of typing, not so much working out. And Chris is looking pretty dang good right now.
Yeah, he's all buff.
Yeah. So I have 3 weeks, I think, from here to when I do that and to get in shape. But now they're making it more robust. So now we've been on set together and all this stuff, and we've been having a great time out there. Now the writers and the showrunners like, all right, we're gonna beef this up a little bit. And so I told them, all right, I just want to get a mag change out of it. I want to be able to dump a mag, boom, boom, get it going.
Yeah.
And I told them I might improv a little bit. So, they stage and block these things out, but I said, don't, and then usually you improv with dialogue, but I said, hey, don't be surprised if I go off script a little bit and go, get after it with Chris. I don't know if I can just let him kill me,
Yeah. Now, was there any, go ahead, Rick.
No, I was just going to ask. So how long is this, how many series is projected out for? I mean, obviously you got kind of, if you want to say season 1, I'm guessing, is this thing going to be continual? What's kind of the vision?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess it would depend. It's my first time down this road. I don't ask too many questions, I don't want to be difficult.
Sure.
So I think it has to do with if it's a success or not. So if it does well, and they probably screen it quite a bit first, I guess, with all the Amazon executives and all that. And if they like it and I'm guessing they test it maybe. And if it tests well, then they probably put a second season, depending on if Chris is available and wants to do it, and if they're willing to pay him to do this thing. So yeah, right now it's the first book is the first season, which is slated for 8 episodes, and then second season would be the second book, True Believer, if it goes. So we'll see. Nice. I mean, it's looking pretty good. I mean, it's looking legit. Antoine is just an incredible director and an incredible person, even more so than a director. He's an amazing guy, and I just feel so fortunate and humble that he's at the helm of this thing. But watching him direct and just interact with everybody was just beyond cool.
With the preface that you wrote in the terminal list, you mentioned the DoD obligation from your previous security clearances and all that. Is there a similar process that you have to go through? Because I can't imagine what that's like, even though it's fiction. Is there a similar process with that in Hollywood?
Nope, of course.
Wow.
Nothing. Yeah,
well,
which is great. Otherwise, nothing would ever. Otherwise, the government would just be able to control everything. So I'm glad that it wasn't, that sort of thing wasn't written into anything that we signed. So yeah, there's nothing like that. Yeah.
Well, good. I can't wait for it to come out. Is there any projected release on that?
Sometime in 2022, just not sure. And I can probably always, even if they gave me a date, it would probably switch anyway, depending on what's going on in the world and what's going on with other things coming out and that sort of thing. But 2022 is what I've been told. Yeah.
Kind of a culture change going from what you're used to a Hollywood set, isn't it? Just kind of that whole culture in general.
Yeah. So I didn't know what to expect. And I kind of had a couple maybe preconceived notions, I guess. But I went in with an open mind. I'm just going so fast all the time, going at 1,000 miles an hour, juggling so many different things that I didn't really put too much thought into it, other than just being excited to get there. But everybody was just there's 350 people working on it, and they're just so excited to have jobs during COVID. They're so excited about this leadership from Chris and Antoine at the highest level on that whole set. So it just filters down, and these guys that are incredible people, just such decent human beings, amazing, and then so good at their craft. And just so professional, and that just trickles down to all those other 350 people. And I've heard that it's not always like that on sets. And that this was a pretty special experience. We had those SEALs there. It's like a reunion, for me and all those guys up there. We're doing something pretty crazy. I can't talk about it. They built something pretty cool to kick this first episode off. That was pretty amazing. So I didn't notice any of that stuff that you might think one would notice on a set. Coming to LA with thinking what maybe we think about New York and LA, that sort of thing. So yeah, it was just like, hey, everybody's there, everybody professional, everybody's there to do a job, and everybody was crushing it. I mean, every single one of those 350 people was fired up and crushing it. It was awesome. And there was a lot of fans of the books. I didn't expect that. That's what I didn't expect. I had people walking up, and I'm with Chris, and then someone like, hey, can I get a signed book? Can I take a picture with you? And I'm like looking at Chris,
like you're talking about Chris, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. They're like, hey, my dad's such a big fan. I can't wait to tell him I met you. And they're like, and I'm like, well, I got some books. Do you want one? And like, yeah. And I said, what's your dad's name? So I love doing that. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, so I was lugging my box of books around from my truck every day onto set there, and so that was great. So yeah, it was definitely not. No one was like standoffish or like. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah,
nothing but a positive experience.
it doesn't. So when you see like the roughs of the daily shoots, I mean, you've got to have some kind of thing that you can go back and look at. Is the excitement just through the roof? I mean, I can't imagine what that would be like, especially you having created the story and the characters.
Yeah, so Chris posted something 2.5 weeks ago, well, 3 weeks ago now. He posted that the board thing that said terminal list and so on, food book directing, all that. And then people started asking me, hey, how do you feel? How does it feel to have your book being made into a series? And I was like, it feels great, but hold on, I got to jump on this call or whatever. So I was going so fast all the time, just building this thing out, all these things going on, that I didn't get a chance really to take a breath and think about it until I was out here. And even being on set the first day, it didn't really sink in. I mean, it sunk in slowly over this last week when I've been out here. So that by the end today, when all those SEALs, we all got together and said goodbyes and all that stuff, and we all parted ways. That was pretty special. So it started to sink in there more so because all those guys that I knew in the teams were up here, and it was such a solid group. So now it's sinking in, I guess. Probably sinking even more when I have this my scene with fighting Chris here in a few weeks. Man, I gotta get after it.
Yeah, like, so I still got it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But then on top of it, Jack, when did the idea for the podcast jump in there? Was that something prior to all this filming? Did it just kind of get stuck in there? What was your driving factor behind that one?
Yeah, so it was actually it was supposed to come out in January of 2022, or sorry, 2020. Yeah, 2020. So it was supposed to come out then. So I recorded my first episodes in November of 2019, and I wanted to do So I heard all these people saying there's no barriers to entry. So I got all this podcast stuff, and I did some recording, and then I'm like, okay, now what? So I ended up with all these cards stacked everywhere from these recordings that I did, audio and video, and then I was so busy I just couldn't make that next leap. There was a barrier for me to entry, and now I have Ironclad Media out in Virginia Beach. They do a lot of stuff in the outdoor space, and they're doing all that stuff. So all I have to do is hit record, and then they can upload and do all that stuff remotely. So, but I wanted to do it because it wasn't available to an author 20, 30, 40 years ago. You couldn't. If you were coming up in 1965, 75, 85, 95, this wasn't something that you could do. It's like you couldn't engage with a readership on social media platforms. You can today. I thought writing was just writing in a cabin in the mountains, and you sent the book to New York, and then you start your next one. I didn't realize until a couple months before my first novel came out that there was a lot more to it than just that there was everything that you'd have to do in any small business, from the budget to the marketing to the advertising to social media engagement, all of that, the products, like all of that stuff is a part of this. And you have to have different verticals that support that main effort. So a podcast is one of those that is now available. And a lot of times on social media platforms, people ask me questions, and some of those questions are not best answered in a one sentence reply. You lose that nuance. There's no facial expressions. There's no body language. There's no context a lot of times, and people can take it any way they want. And then all of a sudden it just ascends into chaos. So I don't do that on social media platforms. This podcast will be the way that I address some of those, answer some of those questions. And then at the same time, I get a ton of questions just about the books or about the gear or how it was inspired by this or that. So rather than, doing these long in-depth posts, which a lot of times I do on history or things like that, this is a different medium to explore some of those other things that aren't best talked about or portrayed through the other social media platforms that I'm on, like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. So it was that was the idea, and then finally now launching over a year and a half later. So to those that I had on the podcast in November of 2019, who I told would be coming out in that next month or 2 months later, I apologize, and we'll get them up here soon. So patience.
So Jack, we'll release yours in, I don't know, maybe 2022, 2023,
Yeah.
Oh man, crazy. So now we're on a schedule. So now it's one a week. Every Wednesday they drop, and kind of getting that dialed in now with all the the graphics and all that, figuring out the system to be as effective and efficient as possible with everybody's time. So and how I feel about all that is that people with the books, whether they're reading it or it's the audiobook they're listening to, that they've trusted me with their time. Our most valuable commodity. And same thing with social media posts. Like they've trusted me enough to follow me on these different platforms. They've trusted me enough to take the time to sign up for my newsletter. So I take that very seriously, and I don't just like repost a funny meme or whatever else. I put thought into these posts because I want to offer something of value to those who have trusted me with that time. So I put a lot of thought into all those supporting efforts that go into allowing me to do what I love to do, which is write these novels.
You know, the podcast that you've put out just recently with Mike Glover and some of the other guys, the guy from Thunder Ranch, man, those were great. Now the productions are unbelievable, and I noticed that. Are they the same ones that did the trailers for the initial books as well?
Exactly.
Those are fantastic as well.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I
really
wanted to do book trailers that had never been done before. I wanted to kind of up the bar on those trailers. So for the first, second, and third novels, they're like movie trailers. And that's why I got to know Ironclad Media, who's doing the podcast now. But I didn't have time to do it for this fourth book. There was just so much going on, launching the podcast, doing the scripts, coming out to LA, launching this fourth book, writing the fifth. And I have 3 kids and a dog and a wife. So all that sort of thing.
Oh, man.
It's been crazy. So no trailer this time, but that's just how it goes.
Because the last one you were in, right? I saw you running around in your.
I had a few people like that was somebody else, but then I had to do a couple things for it as well because they were worried he's gonna put this knife stab into the table. We thought he might slice his hand, so I didn't want to be in it. I wanted to have it separate, but I did have to jump in there a couple times.
Yeah, that was sweet.
Yeah, they're fun to do. And something had to fall. I had to prioritize this time around, and that was just something. We moved in the middle of all this as well, and of course the kids are in the house with COVID stuff going on. At least last spring into early summer.
Oh yeah.
So it was a chaotic year for everybody.
Now you do a lot of contributing on Fox News. I've started to see you quite a bit more. How did that all evolve? I mean, were you asked to come on the show? I know you're friends with some of the folks that work there. How did that all shake out?
Yeah, so Tucker Carlson and I have a mutual friend who put us in contact with one of an article that I wrote about some of the civil unrest over the summer. So got that going there, and we've been trying to figure out an appropriate way to have me on. So that worked out from there, and it came back on another time with him, and then my friend Katie Pavlich, she had posted Fox News Primetime, and so jumped on there with her. It's those are really the only ones I've been on thus far, and it's just another way to reach readers and maybe comment on a few things that I'm getting asked on social media, but don't want to just put in a one sentence reply. But at the same time, like the podcast is such a better way to do these things. I mean, you reach a lot of people, especially with Tucker, but and or any of the primetime lineup but it's you have 3 minutes for the most part, and you're looking into a black camera. Like you don't see body. Like I can see you guys. I can't see Tucker. It's just this black box. And so you have an earpiece in, and so you're like, does he want me to speed up, slow down, or is he interested? What's his face look like? Because I know he has these facial expressions that he does. So that one's a little unnerving, just looking into a black box. I wish you could see the host, and then you could have a better conversation. But that's just not how it goes. I don't know why it doesn't go like that. It's what is it, 2012 now, 2013?
I know.
So.
Yeah, if I could do it in my basement, you think that Fox News could do it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so I know.
Jack, do they at least do they at least give you like a countdown clock so you know how much time, hey, I've been running this, but I want to hit something this last 30 seconds? Or is it just you're out there guessing?
You're guessing, because sometimes, like my second time, I guess went way over. So I had all these points I wanted to make, and I had this like great finishing line I wanted to throw in there. That did not
never
happen.
happens.
No. It was like, hey, thanks for coming on. I was like, oh, okay. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. Did you get the book up there on the thing?
Yeah.
It's interesting, but it's stressful because you can't go back. Like here, if I mess up and I'm like, oh, you know what I meant to say back then? What I meant to say was this. Let me clarify that. I don't think I explained that quite right. So we can have that kind of a conversation. In there, it's just go, and you have the earpiece in, and you hear them talking, and but you can't see anything, so you're not exactly sure what they're showing on the screen. And then all of a sudden, you're on, and it's a little bizarre.
Now, did you record the audiobook? Are you the person reading it, narrating it?
No, thank goodness. So it's Ray Porter. Yeah, I went to the professionals. Ray Porter, who is awesome, who actually plays Darkseid in the Snyder Cut Justice League for those who are movie buffs. Yeah, it just came out a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, it did.
But yeah, he's awesome. Gosh, what a great guy he is. And I had no idea that audiobooks were the fastest growing segment of publishing, which they are. And I had no idea who these top narrators were. And I had no idea that people will follow a narrator from project to project, not just an author. They'll go with that narrator because they like his voice, or they like how he tells stories. So luckily, I chose Ray, and luckily he said yes, because I was nobody. No book was even out yet, and Simon & Schuster sent me like an audio cut, and they said, what do you think of this guy? And I don't even remember who it was, but it was not the right guy, not the right person. So I said, hey, can I listen to a few more the Audible samples and send you somebody? And they said, yeah, sure, by the end of the day, let us know. No problem. And I was looking at my watch, it was like 1 or 2 in Park City, and in New York, it was the end of the day. So started listening to samples on Audible and listening to this guy, Ray Porter. And it's like, oh, interesting. So I listened to more of his stuff, those little 1-minute samples or whatever they are. And I was like, oh, and this guy, I think this is the guy. And then I had no idea how big he was. And then, I sent the name to Simon & Schuster, and they said, well, we can ask him. And I said, oh, okay. And he said yes. And then the first book was up for Audio Book of the Year in 2018. So we went to New York, put on the tuxes and all that stuff. And it was up there next to Stephen King and Ruth Ware. And it was just awesome. And then Ray and I got to know each other, and we've been friends ever since.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Man, that's just an amazing journey, when you sit there and go, because if you kind of go backtrack in time, how did kind of everything start for you when you look at the author side? I mean, was that something you always had a passion for, then just kind of once you retired, or were you writing when you were still in the Navy, or how did all that kind of come about?
Yeah, no, I wasn't writing when I was in the military, but I was always reading. And from a very early age, I knew that I wanted to serve my country in uniform, specifically as a SEAL, and that I wanted to write fiction. And so growing up, when you're reading the nonfiction stuff about SEALs or Special Forces or CIA, there wasn't that much in the early 80s, mid 80s, late 80s, early 90s even, that you could read it all. You could actually read everything out there on SEALs back then, no internet. So I did. I read everything I could possibly read. There was magazine articles. There was a couple mentions in a couple different books. There's actually some beta tape, VHS tapes that showed some guys training for buds and doing some things in Vietnam. After the Navy had made a recruiting video called Men with Green Faces, I think in 1969 or 68, maybe somewhere in there. So I had all that ordered from the back of Soldier of Fortune magazine or Gung Ho magazine, And then I'm reading all this fiction that when I got to be about 10 years old, I switched over to, definitely by 11, but started that transition probably about 10 to reading the things my parents were reading. So I'm reading Tom Clancy, I'm reading David Morrell, Nelson DeMille, A.J. Quinnell, Jesse Pollack, Mark Olden, all these guys who in the 80s had protagonists with backgrounds I wanted in real life one day. So typically they had Vietnam experience back then. They were Vietnam, either Marine sniper, or they were a SEAL, or they were Army Special Forces, they're a CIA guy, that sort of thing. And so I assumed that these authors had done their research. So I was learning by reading these books, and I didn't really realize it, but I was giving myself an early education in the art of storytelling by doing that. And then my mom introduced me to Joseph Campbell, who wrote Here with a Thousand Faces, through a series of interviews that he did with Bill Moyers on PBS called The Power of Myth. And I found out that, hey, these different cultures that had never had any interaction had a similar mythology, a similar hero's journey. And that was really impactful to me. And it talked about how George Lucas was influenced by Joseph Campbell for Star Wars. And of course, as a kid, I'm like, oh, that's amazing. So I started applying that to what I was reading or what I was watching, and just have never stopped reading my entire life. And now I'm friends with some of those guys. I'm dear friends with Stephen Hunter and David Morrell, Stephen Pressfield. It's crazy. That's awesome. I trade emails with those guys all the time, and I'm just so humbled that they even know who I am. But yeah, so I did all that, and then I'm just continuing to read the nonfiction. I'm continuing to read books on warfare, on terrorism, on insurgencies, on counterinsurgencies. I'm staying up to date with what's going on, especially during that very pivotal time when I was from age, let's say, 7 to 17 or whatever, when I'm in the 80s and I'm seeing the Time Newsweek show up at our house. I'm seeing Walter Cronkite in very early days talking about the Iranian hostage crisis in 1979. I'm seeing him count down those days with my parents. I see the cover of Time and Newsweek that has the TWA 847 hijacking on there. I remember the Marine barracks bombing, like all these things, obviously Pan Am 103, like a little later. So all those things were very impactful. Achille Laurel. And then I'm compounding that with popular fiction, with popular culture through film. And I just know where I'm headed. And I know I'm headed for the SEAL teams. And then I know that after that, I'm going to write novels just like the kind that I'm enjoying reading growing up. So those are the only two things I wanted to do. They were callings, definitely. And I look at them both as professions, not careers or anything like that. And just to answer the call. And I was lucky enough to have a mom that was a librarian who encouraged this love of reading from a very early age. So I have a ton of these books that I grew up with still on my shelves today. And I've augmented some with some first editions signed by some of these guys as well, though. Now,
I bet. Heck yeah.
That's pretty special to me.
Yeah. The also in the preface of the terminalist, you spoke about the slight intrusions into our freedoms and the slowly peeling it away. We had a listener, talk about Brad. He's the latest assaults on the 2A. And not to get too political about it, but I think it goes right down exactly what you're talking about. The opportunistic attack on those small little freedoms. Anything, this obviously, having read your book, this isn't a surprise to you, is it?
No. So I try to weave. So even though someone's grabbing, I'll let you in on a little secret, but don't tell anybody. It's just between three of us.
Right.
So when someone grabs this novel, it's a political thriller. They're grabbing this off the shelf and they're going to go on a journey. First one of revenge, next of redemption, next one, this one, the dark side of man through the dynamic of hunter and hunted. And then into this next one, Devil's Hand, where I put myself in the enemy's shoes and look at, hey, what would they have learned over this past 20 years at war? What would they have incorporated into their battle plans? So each one of these books has a very distinct, different theme, but woven through all of that are some common themes, and not necessarily from every character, but from the protagonist. And a lot of that is shrouded in freedom and understanding why we have these natural rights that are enshrined in our Constitution. They're just randomly in there. They are natural rights. They're not granted to us by the government. Therefore, the government cannot take them away from us. So I weave that into the storyline, and I try to do it in a way that is direct, but it's not. But it works into the storyline because sometimes you have these people that are protagonists in these stories or in film, running around Los Angeles, and they have a pistol, and they have extra magazines, or they have an AR with detachable magazine in the back of the car. Well, are they just breaking the law, or did the person that wrote it just not know that that's not legal? So that's so I comment on all those things. And my protagonist definitely is not one to follow the law at every turn, but he thinks about those sorts of things because I want the reader to think about those things and say, oh, really? You can't get a concealed carry permit down there in San Diego County? Well, why not? You have to prove that you have a need for this thing down there, and then they don't grant it to you anyway. Like, what's that about? So anyway, I weave that stuff in there. Second one, we wove a lot about hunting and conservation in there to explain a little bit about that as part of the story, to develop the characters, then move the story forward, but in a way that educates at the same time. So everything I try to do, I try to be thoughtful about it, and I try to weave it into the story in a way that's appropriate. But it's just natural for me to talk about it. I can't not. It's especially with some of these politicians. You'll in this next one, and I think I mentioned it before too, that are standing up there talking about taking away taking away some of our weapons or buying back some of these weapons that they didn't sell to us. Meanwhile, they're protected by a protective detail paid for by our tax dollars, and holding the same weapons that they want to take away from the rest of us. So I weave that stuff in there, and if it's and the characters that are doing that, those are definitely on the antagonist side of things. Yeah.
Thank you, Brad, for that comment. Really appreciate that, pal.
But, Jack, I think it's important because, you tie our freedoms in, history as well, because I think a lot of people out there, we forget. So just you going back, thinking about Time or Newsweek, man, you gave us a chronological history. Bam, all these significant events that you talked about, the Iranian hostages, people are going, what's he talking about? We forget, all these different events that have happened. And, growing up, being in the military during the Cold War, we had an adversary, and people forget that. So it's kind of all twisted. Then they're trying to take, certain people going, oh, we should look at, being socialist. We should look at being communist. And I'm sitting there going, I'm not the brightest guy in the world, but I remember, back in the 80s and 90s, watching them poor cats standing in waist deep snow in Moscow, just waiting for a roll of toilet paper or a piece of bread or whatever horror, they had to live through. And it's like, really, guys, that's the road you want to go down? So I just think it's important that keeps going. Those lessons, try to keep history alive, because people forget. And if we forget our past, we're bound to repeat it and go down those same roads.
That's right. And there's one thing that I try to I don't know, weave in or talk about or bring up as appropriate, which is and I talk to my kids about this as well. It's we owe it to these future generations to study our history and not just make a snap decision because somebody wrote a 220 word tweet and you just retweeted it. And that is the basis for decisions that are going to change the course of our history and take freedoms away from future generations. And that's about all the thought that is going into a lot of people's calculus. So if you're going to make a decision like that, you owe it to these future generations to put in the requisite time, energy, effort, study to that past, to that issue, to understand why it's there before you take it away from your children and your grandchildren and change the course of history. So, and in this case, it's and let's just take it from a popular fiction standpoint, popular culture standpoint. When growing up, did you root for the person in a novel or on a TV show or in a movie who was censoring and who was re-educating and who was canceling? And that I can't think of one. Those were always the bad guys growing up. So for me, it's just take the time to study that past before you make a snap decision based on someone's tweet who obviously did not take the time, energy, and effort to put that requisite effort into the decisions that are going to change the course of our nation. So it's a tough time. There's no doubt about it. And I feel not so great about our kids' future and their kids' future. But try to remain as optimistic as possible and try to do my part by weaving some of these things into the stories and talk about it, on Twitter in a way that's thoughtful, that hopefully makes some other people on the other side or in the middle, or that just aren't paying attention because they have to raise families and they're starting businesses and doing all the rest of it, and they just can't put the time into these things. But maybe they like bow hunting, or maybe they like tactical shooting, or maybe they like reading these thrillers, and maybe they hear something from me or read something in a story that says, you know what, I got to take a breath and look around here a little bit and maybe talk to my kids about why they have these freedoms. Maybe I need to take them down to that national cemetery. We're going to walk down there. We're going to talk about what these people have sacrificed from the inception of our country up until today so that we could have these freedoms, so that I could build this business, or I could go to this job, or so that they could go to this school, and then they could grow up and raise families of their own. So it's important to be thoughtful. And with today, how media comes in today and how we digest it today, and it's just so fast and there's so many distractions, and a lot of these distractions really don't, they're not really healthy, not just for us, but for future generations.
Yeah. And the other thing people need to do is do their research. So, we sit there and take this magic box that gives us information, and we think whatever this magic box tells us is the gospel. And it's like, yep, good to go. It's like, stop. And maybe it's just because of us generationally, where we did have to go to the library. I say something like a card catalog and people would be like, what are you talking about? It's similar to this payphone idea. We had some antiquated things back in the day, but I think personally, it drove us to be better researchers, look at multiple sources for information versus just taking, one thing and going from there. So
you had to put effort in. I mean, you had to ride your bike to the library. You had to go, you had to go ask your one of your parents for a ride to the library. You had to take the bus to the library. So that's effort. Or you could sit there on the couch doing nothing, and that's not a good option. Today, you can sit there on the couch and do nothing while doing all sorts of things. All these
Yes.
distractions are coming through that magic box. Even if you wanted to watch a movie back then, you had to get on your bike and ride to the video store, and then you had to hope that it wasn't rented already, or you could look in that return box and, be kind, rewind, see if they did that, and then maybe drive back and put it in, press play, that sort of thing. Or you could wait for your TV show to come on at 8 or 9 or whatever that was, or you could play Atari 2600, but you can only do that for so long, or you go outside and climb a tree or shoot a bow or do some sprints and all that.
Be back before dark. I mean,
that's it.
Such a man craziness.
Yeah, but it's an investment of time. It's when you invest that time in something, and here it's so easy. It's so easy to put something in. Oh yeah, that's Arnold. No big deal.
Nice.
But you can just type it in, and bam, it's like it's there. You didn't have to put much effort in. The least amount of effort that you had to put in was, back in the day, ask your parents how to spell something, and what would they say? Look it up. Or ask them something that you type into this magic box. Guess what you did? You went to the encyclopedia. If you're lucky, you had the Encyclopedia Britannica's lined up there. A to Z. And I'm trying to collect one from each decade, a nice set from each decade, like starting the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and have those on the shelf, because history can be changed.
Yeah, I wish I still had those encyclopedias. We also had this big dictionary, and back then those really thick dictionaries had other things in it. They had illustrations of the 7 ancient wonders and all that stuff. And those things are great.
No, fantastic. The big ones those are a little difficult. So I still have my dictionary. We have a huge one, but we also have this one from 6th grade that I still have. And it's interesting I recommend people also get dictionaries from different decades, so you can go back and see how the words have changed over time. And you can type something in here and it can pop up on the Google machine, and then you can look back to see what that meant in 1975 and look at the difference between the two and ask those questions as to why is it different coming out of Silicon Valley now.
I don't know, but those were cool.
You're gonna
had its own stand.
I have an idea or two.
Yeah, you're gonna open up the old Silicon Valley Pandora's box, but again, that's history just repeating itself. Because that was happening in the 1900s as well, where companies were controlling certain things, and we're seeing it. It's all just a big repeat, and that's the part that kills me. Is nobody's sitting there going, "Hey, man, we've seen this once before." We've seen kind of back in the day
before,
right, but we've seen the tech giants roll this thing around, control information, and we're still repeating the same cycle. And it's like, make the madness stop, but we're just constantly going back to it. So
I think there's a difference today in that it's a weaponization of information. So take it back to 100 years. We have reporters, companies paying reporters to put different stories in. That takes effort. I mean, you have to develop a source. You have to go and have drinks with that source. You have to maybe get blackmail on that source, or you just have to offer money to someone who's not scrupulous and is known for that source. So there's all sorts of different ways to get your story out there, and control the flow of information that way, but it wasn't necessarily as divisive a tool as it is today. So it's not, it was out there for a purpose, but that purpose didn't seem to just be to divide. And it seems like today, where everybody has this, and also to get that information back then, someone had to go and pay for a newspaper and then carry it home and sit down and then read it. So there's differences there, I think, but just the divisive nature of this instant access to information and communication on so many different platforms is just lends itself to, well, just like anything, people are going to adapt, and they're going to weaponize it and use it for their purposes if they can. And social media and this technology just makes that easier for people, because anyone can do it. If you were picking up that newspaper back in the day, how are you going to then turn around from your kitchen table and use it to divide the country or weaponize that information against somebody who didn't hold a belief that you did? Well, now you can do that from the magic box here with a retweet.
Much easier to do that now. Absolutely. Yeah,
it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah.
Now, the podcast, I know you spoke about the interaction with your viewers and the readers and all that stuff. That's one of the things that Rick and I really enjoy about it, is the interaction. Where do you see that going? Are you going to continue that? Because I can't imagine that you're going to stop, writing your books anytime soon.
Oh no, yeah, no. The book, the books are the main effort. It's what I love to do, and the podcast is just really to explore some of those things and expand the readership through a way that wasn't available 20 or 30 years ago. So it's if it doesn't take away too much. I need to keep it to one a week though. That's about all I have bandwidth for right now. So one a week, record, share some interesting conversations, and if people want to tune in, then wonderful, and if not, then that's okay too. But I'm just going to keep putting them out once a week, and maybe somebody will have a guest on that somebody is interested in, or maybe part of either my story or one of my guest stories can help inspire or give somebody an idea of how to deal with a problem or a situation, or can add a new perspective or something that allows people to grow, because that's really what it's all about.
Awesome.
Yeah. And that was kind of, with us, is trying to get the word out there, especially with everything, all the craziness that went on last year, and you bring up a great point, Jack, because you're like, everything is what you make of it. And yes, we can sit there and go 2020. Oh, and everyone goes, oh, but we sit there and go, hey man, there was a drama where we couldn't get out. We couldn't get the word out. You've got social kind of mandating what they can say, what they can't. Oh, you want to talk about guns? We're going to blacklist you, yada, yada. Cool. Let's open up a podcast. We can still get our message out there. And again, we were starting low tech, just talking on phones, trying to figure stuff out, and then slowly progressing where we are today. But it's a great tool to have fantastic people on, kind of debut what they're doing, get their message out there, help other people. We've got, viewers in there shooting notes and getting all that stuff. And I think it's truly a fantastic platform to get information out to people, like you said, to try to help them. How can we benefit? People are struggling, people or whatever, and just lift them up to sit there and go, I say this, if you go 2020 was a bad year, I go, shame on you. What did you do to try to help yourself? And I think we've gotten into a kind of a position as a country where we're looking for what's the easy button to press. It's that good old fashioned hard work, kind of going back to, like you said, be the kid sitting on the couch, or you can go out and do some stuff.
Yeah.
And I got it. There were some people got hit economically hard, without a doubt. I'm not going to turn a blind eye to that, but it's like, what can we do to kind of make ourselves better, incrementally better each day? If you're doing that, I think that's a success, to get people going and try to have that vision to go just a little better each day, a little better. So
no, absolutely. And it's, I talk to people about, hey, if you went into last March of 2020, last April of 2020, and didn't feel quite so prepared, what were those things that you could have done better? And it's not just identifying them. Maybe you identified them in March or April last year, but did you act on them? Did you then turn that knowledge into wisdom? And did you share that with your kids? Do they know how to use fire extinguishers now? Are they on the different levels of your house? Did you go outside and teach them how to do that? Do they work? That sort of thing. Did you feel like, oh, maybe I should have a firearm in the house just in case I call 911 and no one shows up to magically protect me from someone breaking into my home? Oh, how do I do? What should I get? Okay. Do I need some training? Yeah. Probably. That's probably the most important part of it. And, little things like having, flashlights and headlamps, and having some way to filter water, and having some extra food, and just those things that allow you to have that base level covered, so that when something does happen, whether it's civil unrest, whether it's a natural disaster, no matter what it might be, that you have that base level covered. So you're not wasting bandwidth on that. You're devoting bandwidth to where it needs to go, which is solving that problem, and whatever that problem might be. But I did learn an interesting term this week, and it's called, you will fix it in post. And that means like something went wrong out there on the set, you're filming, all this stuff's happening, and like, okay, we'll fix it in post. So now I think for 2020 is that let's fix it in post, which is where we are now in 2021. So it's time to fix it and take some action on some of those things that you identified last year. And a lot of that's financial too, making some decisions that give you a little bit of a financial, not necessarily freedom. Well, that's what a lot of us are working towards, but that foundation. So you have some breathing room if all of a sudden you don't have a job tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And hopefully, that, like you said, I think that's the biggest takeaway from all that, is just learn from it. If you were sitting there down to your last roll of toilet paper thinking you got to go stand out in the Moscow snow to get you another one, I'm sorry. But
yeah, that was an odd one of all the things to worry about.
Well, you certainly got a lot going on. Is there anything that we haven't touched that you got going on that's coming up? I know you're busy with the production of the show and those kind of things. You have anything coming out? I see you got your hat. That's your hat, correct?
Yep, have the hat here, launching the merch again. So it was just my wife and I packaging up merch this last year, and finally we got to December, and I did this 1,000 card giveaway thing, and I forgot to tell my wife about it. And she's the one that prints all the things, everything out. And she's like, "What's all these cards that just arrived? All these things." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm sending out 1,000 Christmas cards." She's like, "What? What did you say?" Like, "Yeah, can you just print those things up?" That was a lot more work than we thought. So after that, she was like, "Okay, it's time to outsource this." So now we're gonna have a fulfillment center start doing it here in a couple of weeks when we relaunch with a couple different like product line type things that'll launch throughout the year, kind of limited edition stuff, like 4 or 5 different launches, and do it like that, but all through, not out of our bedroom and kitchen. That'll be great. Time to professionalize this operation.
Yeah,
totally.
Wow. Well, good luck
Jack,
with that.
Thank you.
I was just going to ask it. Do you got any recommendations for veterans getting ready to transition, whether they're retiring or just getting out? You know, you got any pearls of wisdom from your experiences, you know, from the entrepreneurial side, things to try to set themselves up for success?
Yeah, it's not to try to recreate or think that you can recreate on the outside what you had in the military. And it's not just for the military, it's anything. It can be law enforcement. It can be that means I have another interview coming up in 5 minutes. But where was I going with that? Now I'm like, what interview do I have next? Jeez. Where was I going with that?
Not creating the military in the civilian world.
Yes. So that was one chapter. That was one chapter of your life. It doesn't have to be any of that. It can be a divorce. It can be a death of a loved one, just changing jobs. It can be anything like that. It doesn't have to be military special operations. It doesn't have to be transitioning out of the NFL. It doesn't have to be transitioning as an Olympic athlete or anything like that. It can be any sort of transition in life. But all those experiences and whatever chapter that was it's a foundation on which to build, not to stay muddled in. So I saw a lot of people as they were getting out, they had a hard time leaving the SEAL teams behind. They stayed in the same area. They went to the same bars, to the same grocery stores, kept coming through buds, giving tours, that sort of thing. And for me, it was important to make a clean break with that. It's obviously a huge part of who I am. It's woven into my stories. I was just here on the set with 12 of my great friends from the SEAL teams filming this show. But it's a foundation, and we're moving forward. So I think that's the main thing that I would say is use that experience as a foundation. Don't stay there. And a lot of guys have a hard time not staying there, or they have a hard time moving on. They just stay there living in that past. So don't live in that past, but use it as a foundation, even if it's negative or it's a horrible experience, or guess you can build on bad experiences as well. You can learn from those as well going forward, especially if you make changes and you share that experience with that next generation, with your children, so that they don't make those same mistakes and everyone moves forward together in a positive way. So I think that's probably the main thing. And then a lot of people are going to tell you how hard it is to do whatever it is you want to do next in life. Doesn't matter. A lot of people, like we just talked about, social media and kind of the negative side of that. And a lot of people are going to tell you how tough it is to become a New York Times bestseller, how tough it is to get Amazon series. Okay, fine. Don't think about that, because that's bandwidth as well. You have to devote that bandwidth towards where you want to go. So never pay attention to the odds. And then one thing I like to leave my kids with, or talk to my kids with, or weave it in as appropriate, is to never miss an opportunity to make somebody's day, because that just helps us all.
Just be a good person, man.
Yep.
There we go.
Well, thank you for doing this, my friend. Thank you for your service. And, it just goes to show you the way you treat people led to production and the executive producer chair. And you certainly treated us great today. And you treated my wife and I at SHOT Show fantastic. So thank you again for doing this, Jack. We really appreciate it. And congratulations on all your success and continued success, pal. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And thank you guys for fighting the good fight out there, and stay safe. Please give your wife my best. And thank you for holding the line for us all.
Really, buddy. Happy Easter, Jack, to you and your family.
Yeah, buddy. Hey, we'll get out of here. I know you got another, you're a busy man. You got another one to do. So thank you very much, Jack. Really appreciate you.
Absolutely. You guys take care. Talk soon.
You too, brother.
Take care, buddy.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow, man. He did not disappoint. Jack is a great
No.
guy, great show, just fantastic human being, American, and
Yep.
it was a real treat for us, and I know it's a real treat for our listeners, buddy.
Yeah, man, and I think Jack summed it up perfectly. Just try to be a good person. Do something good for somebody. Man, life is so much easier. So
you're
that's
gonna have
all
a
it
lot
is,
more
man.
fun too.
100%, without a doubt, without a doubt. Yeah.
Hey,
So
man.
everyone out there, make sure you check out. I was just gonna say, check out Jack's book. The Devil's Hand comes out on the 13th.
April 13th. Yep.
Yeah, April 13th. So you can check him out. His website's the official jackcarr.com. Jack Carr USA on Instagram. So yeah, go check him out. And don't forget Danger Close podcast. Man, gotta love those podcasters.
Oh yeah. And it's a good show too, man. The production's great, and he's got great guests on there. I think we have great guests, but he's got some good guests as well. And he's just he's the history that he goes into, and he's just so well read and so informed. His IG is amazing. He's got a great following. So, but hey, big shout out to our patrons, John, Jeremy, John, and Dan. And you know what? Everybody that joined in today, and Brad, thanks for the great question. Kimmy showing up, patronizing the show. Really appreciate her stopping by. But if you guys are listening to Amazon Audibles, Amazon Music, if you're listening to iHeartRadio, we're now on Pandora, Apple, Spotify. Make sure you smash the subscribe, the follow, and go ahead and give us a rating and leave us a comment. And it really will get this algorithm off our back. But what a great show, buddy. And,
awesome show, man.
Yeah. Thank you for joining me, Rick, on this Good Friday and Easter weekend.
Brother. Yeah, man.
And let's do it again real soon, man, because this is always a lot of fun.
You got it, buddy. So, happy Easter to you and the family.
Yeah, you too, buddy. And all you guys out there and gals listening, happy Easter. Have a safe one. And we'll be posting when our next shows will be coming out soon. All right, Rick. Thanks, buddy. Have a good weekend.
All right, guys.